I traveled to my son's home without informing him and discovered my daughter in law alone, critically ill in the ICU. Meanwhile, my son was out driving around town with some girls in the car I had purchased for him. I quietly contacted the police and reported the car as stolen. 2 days later, when he was released, he came back to me on his knees, only to find out that I had transferred everything to his wife. Hello, dear friends. Before I share this difficult story, I kindly ask for a favor. Please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It helps stories like this reach more people. Also, please leave a comment telling me which city or state you're listening from. It would warm my heart to see how far my voice has traveled. Get comfortable and enjoy listening. The airport welcomed me with a bustling atmosphere, the aroma of roasted coffee, and the weight of others' expectations. However, I did not feel the joy of reunion that typically envelops mothers visiting their children. Deep inside, a heavy knot of anxiety twisted within me. This overwhelming feeling compelled me, a woman known for meticulous planning, to abandon everything, buy a ticket for the next flight, and travel halfway across the country without any warning. In the tote bag slung over my shoulder, I carried 2 jars of homemade elderberry preserves, tart and healing, which my son Sterling loved as a child back in Chicago. Alongside the jars was a soft teddy bear. It might have seemed foolish, since Vada, my daughter-in-law, wasn't even pregnant as far as I knew. Yet during our last conversation, her voice sounded so fragile that I wanted to bring her something warm and comforting. As I stepped out of the terminal, I inhaled the humid air of this southern city, which felt thick compared to the sharp winds of the north. My phone remained silent in my coat pocket. I had been trying to reach Sterling for 3 days, but he never answered. Vada had also vanished from contact a week ago. You can't deceive a mother's heart, as the saying goes. I used to think it was just a poetic phrase until I experienced that cold sting of fear myself. The Uber ride took about 40 minutes to reach their neighborhood. The building appeared monumental and secure, a historic brick structure with high ceilings and a spacious courtyard. I purchased this condo for them 3 years ago, right after their wedding, hoping to give them a head start I never had. I wanted them to avoid knowing what it meant to count pennies until payday or live in a cramped, damp apartment. I thought a foundation of bricks and money would ensure their happiness. How wrong I was. When I stepped off the elevator on the 3rd floor, I froze at the door. It was ajar, not wide open, but just enough as if someone had hurried out and forgotten to shut it completely. I pushed the heavy door with my shoulder and entered. A stale, heavy stench assaulted me, nothing like home or the peach cobbler Vada used to bake. It reeked of stale tobacco smoke and something sour, like wine gone bad. Sterling had promised me he quit smoking a year ago. "Mama, it's bad for you, and it's not fashionable anymore," he had said with that charming smile of his, the one that could always get anything out of me. Boots were scattered in the hallway, one standing upright, the other kicked against the coat rack, leaving a scuff mark on the cream-colored wallpaper. I ventured into the kitchen, trying to tread softly, unsure of who I was afraid of waking. A mountain of unwashed dishes towered on the table beside dried-up pizza crusts and empty bottles of expensive cognac, with a stack of unopened utility bills precariously perched on the edge. But that wasn't the worst part. Next to the bills sat a small box of heart medication and blood pressure pills prescribed to Vada 6 months ago. The package remained sealed, and the dust covering it spoke volumes. It hadn't been touched in a long time. "Who are you looking for?" A raspy voice croaked from behind me. I jumped and turned around. A neighbor stood in the doorway, an elderly woman in a faded housecoat, gazing at me with a mix of curiosity and pity. "I'm Sterling's mother," I replied. My voice was steady, but inside, I felt everything shrinking. Where were they? Where was Vada? The neighbor pursed her lips and shook her head. "Oh, honey, I don't know where your Sterling is. Out running the streets somewhere, I reckon. The music was booming in here until morning 3 days ago, but your girl Vada, the ambulance took her." "When?" I exhaled, feeling the world tilt. 2 or 3 days ago. They carried her out on a stretcher. She didn't look conscious, thin as a shadow. Nobody's been back since. The apartment's just been sitting open. I was about to call the police. I don't remember leaving the building or hailing a cab. Only one thought pulsed in my mind: City General Hospital. That was the nearest trauma center for all emergency cases. The ER waiting rooms smelled of bleach and trouble. People in scrubs flashed by like white blurs. I, usually composed and polite, pushed through, demanding the admission list. Vada's married name, Jefferson, was found in the ICU log. The intensive care unit met me with silence, interrupted only by the rhythmic beeping of machines. They hesitated to let me in, but my presence, the look of a mother ready to tear down any wall, compelled the nurse to call the doctor. Dr. Dubois emerged, a tall man with tired eyes. He removed his glasses and wiped them on the edge of his coat, studying me. "You the mother?" he asked dryly. "Mother-in-law. Where is she? What's wrong with her?" "Pneumonia," he stated clearly. "Bilateral, advanced, but that's only part of it. The body is exhausted, extreme dehydration and dystrophy. Looks like she hasn't eaten a proper meal in 2 weeks and lay with a fever of 104 for at least 5 days without any help. If the neighbors hadn't called 911 when they heard her fall, we wouldn't be having this conversation." I listened, and every word dropped into my soul like a stone into a well. Didn't eat, didn't drink, lay alone. Where was my son? Where was the husband who vowed to be there in sickness and in health? "Can I see her?" I asked quietly. "For a minute. She's in a medically induced coma on a ventilator." I entered the room. Vada lay on the high bed, entangled in tubes and wires. Her face seemed wider than the pillow. Her cheekbones appeared so sharp it looked like they might tear through her skin. She had always been petite, but now she looked transparent. This wasn't just an illness. It was a slow murder by indifference. I couldn't breathe. The air thickened, pressing on my chest. I needed to escape to inhale the cool outside air before I screamed right there. I nodded to the doctor and, feeling numb, walked to the exit. I paused on the hospital steps. The evening city lit up around me. Cars sped by. People hurried about their business, unaware that a young woman was fighting for her life behind those walls. Then I saw him. Tires screeched. A massive SUV rounded the corner, its metallic midnight blue paint sparkling under the streetlights, blinding my eyes. This car, luxurious and powerful, the safest in its class, was the one I had given Sterling for his birthday a month ago. He had said it was for the family, to drive future kids around. The windows were rolled down, and deafening club music poured from the cabin, rattling the glass in the hospital windows. Sterling was behind the wheel, laughing, head thrown back, shouting something to his passengers. The passengers were two young women, shrieking with delight, leaning out the windows and waving at passers-by. Sterling didn't glance at the hospital. He didn't even turn his head toward the windows, where his wife was fighting for every breath. He was the king of the world, the owner of an expensive toy I had bought him. The car roared past, blasting me with wind and the smell of burnt rubber, and disappeared around the turn toward downtown, where the nightclub lights burned. I stood there, stunned. Anger hadn't arrived yet. There was only icy numbness. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. A message from Sterling lit up the screen, the first one in 3 days. The text read, "Hey Ma, can't talk. I'm at the hospital with Vada right now. It's really serious. The doctors are fighting. I haven't left her side. Pray for us." I stared at the glowing screen and the letters blurred, not from tears, but from a cold heat rising within me. "Pray for us," he wrote. The man who had just sped past his dying wife, with loud music and strange women, was asking me for prayers. In that moment, something inside me snapped with a loud crack. It wasn't the sound of a broken heart. It was the sound of the string of my blind motherly love snapping. I realized that before me stood not just an immature boy confused about life, but a monster, calculating, cynical, and absolutely certain of his impunity. I didn't scream. I didn't call him back to vent my rage or hear his pathetic excuses or drunken laughter. Screaming is the weapon of the weak. It's an admission of pain. I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity, a terrifying clarity I hadn't felt even during the hardest years of running my logistics business, when I had to fire thieves or stand my ground against racketeers in the 90s. Slowly, I turned around and walked back into the hospital building. The lobby was quiet. Only the coffee machine hummed. I approached the receptionist, a young girl writing in a logbook. "Miss, may I have some water?" I asked. My voice sounded steady, scarily calm, even to myself. She handed me a plastic cup. I sat in a hard chair in the corner of the waiting room. I needed 10 minutes. 10 minutes to bury my son. The son I remembered with scraped knees and his first clumsy drawing for Mother's Day, his promises to be my rock. That Sterling no longer existed. All that remained was this stranger with my eyes who thought the world revolved around him. I took a sip of water. It was warm and tasted like plastic. The picture came together in my head. The car, that midnight blue Escalade. I bought it. I chose the trim. I paid for the insurance, and thankfully I registered it in my name. Sterling had pouted then, pushing out his lip. "Mama, don't you trust me?" I had joked it off, saying insurance was cheaper for a senior citizen. Now that joke was my ace in the hole. He thought the car was an extension of his ego, but on paper, it was my property, which meant he drove it only with my silent consent, a consent that ended the moment I saw his laughing face in the window. I took out my phone and, without a twitch of a muscle in my face, dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? A tired dispatcher answered. Good evening. I want to report a stolen vehicle, I said clearly, ensuring every word landed heavily. State your name and the vehicle information. I provided my name, the make of the car, the license plate number. Where and when did the theft occur? I just saw my vehicle, a blue Escalade, moving down Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, heading toward the entertainment district. An unauthorized male is behind the wheel. Do you know the thief? I closed my eyes for a second. Vada's face, tangled in tubes, floated before me. No, I lied. Or maybe I told the truth. Was this person my son? I suspect the driver is under the influence of alcohol. He is driving aggressively, creating hazardous situations. There are passengers in the vehicle. Their lives may be in danger. I ask you to take urgent measures. Copy that. An APB has been issued to patrol units. Please hold. I hung up. The hand holding the phone was absolutely steady, no tremors, no doubts. I had just set the law on my own flesh and blood, and I didn't feel an ounce of regret. But that wasn't enough. The car was just metal. I needed to secure what mattered. I found Odora's number in my contacts. My old friend, the sharpest attorney in the city, a woman who didn't ask unnecessary questions when she heard the steel in my voice. It was late, but Odora answered after the second ring. Oilia, are you in town? Why didn't you call? Hello, Odora. I'm here. Listen to me carefully. I need you to start drafting some documents right now tonight. What documents, Oilia? Did something happen? Worse, Odora. Much worse. I need a deed of gift for the condo, the one where Sterling and Vada live. Got it? Transferring it to Sterling? No, I cut her off. Not to Sterling, to Vada. Silence hung on the line. Odora had known me for 30 years. She understood how I doted on that boy. Such a change of course could only mean a catastrophe. To Vada, she repeated slowly. Oilia, are you sure? That's a serious step. That property is worth a fortune. I have never been more sure, Odora, and prepare a general power of attorney in my name to handle all matters related to that property. I want the papers ready for signing tomorrow morning. I'll pay double your rate for the rush. I'll get it done. Her voice turned all business. Come to my office at 8 a.m. We said goodbye. I remained sitting in the lobby, staring at the closed doors of the ICU. 20 minutes passed. Time stretched thick as tar. I imagined the patrol car with flashing lights pinning the blue SUV to the curb, how the loud music would die, how the smirk would slide off Sterling's face. My phone rang sharply, slicing through the hospital silence. An unknown local number. Oilia Vance. The voice was strictly official. Yes, speaking. This is Officer Bradshaw. We've detained a vehicle matching your description on Peachtree Street. Behind the wheel is a citizen, Sterling Vance. He is behaving belligerently and resisting arrest. In the background, I heard noise, a scuffle, and my son's distorted shout. You have no right. Call her. That's my mother. She'll explain everything. Miss Vance, the officer continued, raising his voice to be heard over the noise. The suspect claims he is your son and that you gave him the car. Is this true? I took a deep breath of the sterile hospital air, imagining Vada lying behind the wall, alone in the darkness of her coma while he partied. Officer, I said in a tone that held no hesitation. My son Sterling is currently in the ICU of City General Hospital. He is sitting by his dying wife's bedside, holding her hand. He is praying for her health and hasn't left her side. The man you detained is a liar. I don't know who he is or why he is hiding behind my name." A second of silence hung on the other end as the officer processed the information. "I understand, Miss Vance. We will proceed with the full extent of the law. Grand theft auto, resisting arrest, fraud. Thank you." "Thank you, officer. Do your job." I pressed the button to end the call. The screen went dark. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the window. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, but I liked her. She was ready for war. I put the phone in my bag, like holstering a revolver after a shot. Inside, the silence still rang, the kind that comes after a deafening explosion. But there was no time for reflection. I had a goal, and that goal lay behind the wall, tangled in wires. The next 48 hours blurred into one endless gray day. I practically moved into the hospital, spoke with the chief of medicine, paid for a private room, and hired a round-the-clock private nurse. Money, as always, opened doors that remained closed to mere mortals. I sat by Vada's bed, holding her limp hand, and talked. I talked about the weather, the beautiful autumn leaves back north, and the sweet potato pies we would bake when she got better. I filled the silence with words so that death wouldn't dare enter the pause. Sterling sat in a holding cell during this time. I knew this because my phone periodically lit up with unknown numbers from the jail. He was using his one phone call, but he wasn't calling a lawyer. He was calling me. I didn't answer. I imagined him there, furious, not scared. He was probably pacing the cell like a tiger in a cage, telling his cellmates what a monstrous mistake this was. "My mama's gonna come down here. She's gonna tear this place up." I could hear his imaginary voice. He was sure this was just a glitch in the system, a bureaucratic hell from which I, his almighty mama, would rescue him. Once, he left a voicemail. I listened to it in the hallway, phone pressed to my ear. "Mama, where are you? Why aren't you answering?" His voice cracked. "There's some crazy nonsense happening. The cops say you reported it stolen. Are you out of your mind? Bring the papers for the car and the keys fast and tell them you made a mistake. I'm sitting here with bums." Not a word about Vada, not a question about how she was, only me, mine. He was sure Vada was silent, that like a loyal dog, she was at home waiting for him, not daring to complain to her mother-in-law. He didn't know his silent victim was balancing on the edge of life and death, and that her silence was more eloquent than any words. In between shifts at the bedside, I went to the apartment to find Vada's ID to process the transfer to the private room. The apartment greeted me with the same smell of stagnation and betrayal. I started methodically going through things in their bedroom. In a dresser drawer, beneath a stack of neatly folded linens, I stumbled upon an old diary in a worn cover. It wasn't just a notebook, it was a chronicle of survival. I opened it at random. Vada's handwriting, usually round and neat, was small and erratic here. March 12th, Sterling asked for money again, said he needed it to maintain his status in front of partners. I gave him the last $400 I saved for the dentist. My tooth hurts unbearably, but he said if he didn't have a new shirt, the deal would fall through and we'd be on the street. I flipped the page. April 20th, he screamed, said the apartment is actually his, that his mother gave it to him and they just let me stay there. Said if I nag him about a job, he'll kick me out. I'm scared. I have nowhere to go. Mom's gone. Dad is far away. I have to endure it for the family. My vision darkened. He lied to her. He used my kindness as a weapon to beat this girl into submission. He convinced her she was nobody, an empty space in his kingdom. He wasn't just stealing her money. He was stealing her dignity, day by day, drop by drop. May 5th, he sold my gold ring, grandma's ring, said he lost it, but I saw the pawn shop receipt in his pocket. With that money, he bought himself a watch. Said, you just sit at home anyway. You don't need jewelry, but I need to look presentable. I closed the notebook, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so concentrated it felt like it could burn through the paper. This wasn't just selfishness. This was financial and psychological terror. He was methodically destroying her to elevate himself. I took the notebook with me. It was evidence, not for court, but for my conscience, so that when he came to me with the eyes of a beaten dog, I wouldn't waver. Returning to the hospital, I resumed my vigil at Vada's bedside. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor became the only music. I took her hand in mine. It was dry and hot. You are not alone, baby girl, I whispered. Do you hear me? You are not alone anymore. I am here, and I know everything. He won't hurt you again, I promise. Several more hours passed. Outside the window, the sky began to turn gray. The morning of the third day approached. I dozed off, sitting in the chair, head dropped on my chest. Suddenly, I felt a faint movement, like a butterfly wing brushing my palm. I snapped my eyes open. Vada's fingers, resting in my hand, twitched slightly. I froze, afraid to scare away the moment. Her eyelids fluttered, lifting slowly like a heavy curtain. Her gaze was cloudy, unfocused. She looked through me, through the ceiling, somewhere into the void. Then her eyes cleared a little, and she saw me. There was no recognition in them, only fear. A primal, deep-seated fear. Her lips moved under the mask. I leaned close to her face to hear. Don't let him in. Her voice rustled, quiet as dry leaves. Don't let him in. Who, honey? Who shouldn't I let in? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She squeezed my hand with unexpected strength. Terror splashed in her eyes. Sterling. She breathed out, and a tear rolled down her temple. He turned off the heat, said it was expensive. I'm cold. Don't let him in. The monitors beeped more urgently. Her pulse spiked. The nurse rushed to us with a syringe. Shh, Vada, calm down. I stroked her head, feeling a wave of cold, murderous resolve rising inside me. No one will touch you. Sleep. He turned off the heat in winter in an apartment where his sick wife lay, just to save a few bucks that he immediately blew on gas for his toy and cocktails for tramps. He was freezing her alive. I walked out of the room, leaving the doctors to work on Vada. My face had turned into a stone mask. There was no longer a mother. There was a judge, and the verdict had already been passed, final and without appeal. I stepped out of the hospital into the morning fog, feeling every step resonate in my head. But there was no fatigue. Liquid nitrogen flowed through my veins instead of blood. Vada's words, he turned off the heat, became the final drop that turned my grief into a mechanism of destruction. An Uber took me to Odora's law office in 20 minutes. The city was just waking up. Street sweepers cleared the sidewalks, unaware that someone's world was collapsing. Today, Odora was waiting for me, just as she promised. Her office smelled of expensive coffee and old paper, the scent of stability and law. You look terrible, Oilia, she said instead of a greeting, eyeing my rumpled coat and the dark circles under my eyes. But your eyes are burning in a way that scares me. Let's get to business, Odora. I sat in the chair without removing my coat. Are the papers ready? She silently slid a folder toward me. Deed of gift for the condo in the name of Vada Jefferson. Everything as you asked, but Oilia, before you sign, I have to show you something. Odora pulled another folder from the safe, a thin blue one. Yesterday, when I was pulling the title abstract, I stumbled upon an interesting inquiry. Your son Sterling applied to a payday loan company a week ago. A very shady one, I must say. And, I asked, feeling a new spring tighten inside, and as collateral for the loan, he provided copies of the documents for this very apartment. She opened the folder and showed me a photocopy. I looked at my signature. It was almost perfect. Almost. Only the tail of the O was a little longer than I usually write. It's a forgery, I stated calmly. Crude, but for thugs it would pass. Odora nodded. He was planning to borrow a huge sum, and if he couldn't pay it back, and he wouldn't have, judging by his credit history, which I also checked, some tough guys would have come to you asking you to vacate the premises. He planned to sell the roof over his wife's and mother's heads to cover gambling debts. We're talking thousands, Oilia. He's a gambler. I closed the folder. The puzzle was complete. That's why he saved on heating and medicine for Vada. He didn't need money for status. He needed it for the game. And when the money ran out, he decided to bet the apartment. My apartment. Vada's life. Where's the pen? I asked. Odora handed me a heavy Parker pen. I signed the deed with sweeping, heavy strokes, 3 copies. With every stroke, I cut off a piece of the past where my beloved son Sterling existed. Now there was only Sterling Vance, fraudster and sadist. Send it for registration immediately, electronically, so the apartment is hers in an hour. We'll do it. Odora nodded, stamping the official seal. What about the car? I'll handle the car myself. Leaving the notary, I dialed the dealership where I bought that cursed SUV. The manager, recognizing my voice, practically bowed over the phone. Alex, listen to me carefully. The car I bought last month is currently at the police impound lot. As the owner, I'm authorizing you to pick it up with a tow truck. I'm sending the documents via courier right now. Of course, Miss Vance. Where should we deliver the vehicle? To service? No, to the trade-in department. I want to sell it immediately. Sell it? Genuine surprise rang in the manager's voice. But it's brand new. You'll take a loss. I don't care how much I lose. Sell it today for whatever price the wholesalers offer. Main condition: the money must not be transferred to my account. I will send you the details for the hospital's charity fund, purpose of payment, treatment and rehabilitation of Vada Jefferson. I understand. We'll get it done. I hung up. Now Sterling had nothing. No wheels, no housing, no mother's purse. I had scorched the earth around him, leaving him naked in the ashes. My phone pinged again. A notification from the bank. The state filing fee had been paid. The apartment was going to Vada. I returned to the hospital to give the doctors a copy of the payment receipt for the treatment. The money from the car sale would arrive by evening, but I wanted them to know resources exist. Spare nothing. As I was leaving the chief physician's office, my phone came alive again. This time, it wasn't Sterling. An unknown woman was calling. Hello, is this Sterling's mother? The voice was squeaky, young, and entitled. Who is this? I asked in an icy tone. This is Candy. I was with Sterling in the car when those pigs arrested us. Listen, lady, your son told me the whip was his, that he's a big businessman, and now the cops are telling me the car is stolen. Are you running a family of con artists? I chuckled. Here they were, colleagues. Candy, I said softly, almost sweetly. Sterling lied to you. He has no car, he has no business, and he has no apartment either. He lives off a librarian wife and a retired mother. What? The phone squealed. But he promised me a trip to Miami. I'm afraid the only trip he's going on is a bus ride to the unemployment office. I hung up, and immediately another message arrived from Sterling. Mama, they released me. It was hell. I'm coming home. We need to talk seriously. You owe me an explanation for this circus. He was going home to an apartment that didn't belong to him anymore, to a wife he almost killed. He still thought he was the master of the situation. I checked my watch. 2 hours had passed since I gave the order to the dealer. At that moment, Sterling's phone must have been on full volume because I imagined him standing on the steps of the police station, dirty and angry, reading the message Candy had just sent him. I didn't see it, but I knew it would happen. Candy, judging by her voice, wasn't a girl who forgave shattered dreams of Miami. Indeed, a minute later, Odora sent me a screenshot. She was monitoring Sterling's social media. A post appeared on his wall from user Queen Candy. Yo ladies, don't fall for this loser at Sterling Vance. The whip is his mama's. Bro is broke and his own mom called the cops on him. Gah, embarrassing. Don't call me again, loser. I put the phone away. Checkmate. Son, you wanted the high life. You got the fame. Now let's see how you handle it. I got up and walked to the exit. I needed to meet him not at home, but at the hospital where the truth lay, the truth he was running from so hard. I positioned myself in the lobby right across from the elevators. In my hands was a book, a volume of Baldwin I had grabbed from Vada's house, but the lines jumped before my eyes, refusing to form meaning. I wasn't reading. I was waiting. About 40 minutes passed before the elevator door slid open, and he stepped out. Sterling looked pathetic. His designer shirt was wrinkled and stained with something brown. His hair was standing on end, and dark shadows lay under his eyes. He limped on his left leg, probably the result of a warm welcome from cellmates or the police during the arrest. But even in this state, he tried to carry himself with pride. He looked around, searching not for a doctor, not for his wife, but for me. Seeing me in the chair, he headed straight for me, his face twisted into a grimace that was supposed to portray righteous anger, but resembled the tantrum of a spoiled child. Finally, he barked across the corridor, startling a dozing nurse. Mama, what did you do? Do you realize what you've done? They kept me in the tank for 2 days with bums. He loomed over me, expecting me to jump up as usual, to start gasping, apologizing, shoving money at him, and patting his head. But I didn't move. I slowly closed the book, placed it on my knees, and raised my eyes to him. My gaze was dry and calm as a desert. Hello, Sterling, I said quietly. You smell. Go take a shower before you shout. He was taken aback. For a second, his mouth opened like a fish thrown on the shore. Smell? He squealed, lowering his voice only because a doctor walked by. Mama, are you out of your mind? You reported me to the police. You said I stole the car, my car. You embarrassed me in front of my friends, in front of Candy. Do you know what she wrote to me? I know, I nodded. She wrote the truth. You're a loser, Sterling. The word hit him harder than a slap. He recoiled, his face breaking out in red blotches. How dare you, he stammered. I'm going to Vada right now. She'll confirm I took the car with her consent. She'll tell them all, and you'll regret treating me like this. Where are the keys? Give me the keys to the car. I have to go. I have business. You have no business, Sterling. I spoke measuredly as if driving nails. And you have no car. What do you mean, no? He laughed nervously. Did you hide it? Come on, Ma. Lesson learned. Give me the keys. I really need to go. I promised the guys. The car is sold, I interrupted him. An hour ago, the dealer picked it up from the impound. The money has already been transferred to the clinic's account. What? His eyes bulged. You had no right. That was my gift. That was my property. On paper, I disposed of it as I saw fit. The money will go to pull your wife back from the dead, from the grave you drove her into. He froze for the first time. Not anger, but fear flickered in his eyes. But it wasn't fear for Vada. It was the fear of a beast, cornered and stripped of its fangs. You're lying, he wheezed. You couldn't. You love me. I'm your son. I do, I agreed, and it was true, bitter as wormwood. But I will no longer sponsor you. You are a grown man, Sterling, 35 years old. You have no job. You have no car. And by the way, I paused, savoring the moment of truth, you have no home. What do you mean? He paled, the blotches on his face standing out even brighter. The apartment, the condo now belongs to Vada officially. I signed the deed of gift this morning. You are no longer the master there. You aren't even on the lease. He stood swaying as if the floor was moving beneath his feet. All his arrogance, all his fake bravado fell away like husks. You couldn't, he muttered. You're bluffing. You just want to scare me. I'm going to Vada right now. She loves me. She'll cancel it. She'll sign whatever I say. He spun around and dashed toward the ICU doors. Vada, he screamed, throwing the door open. Vada, tell her. I didn't even stand up. I knew what would happen next. Sterling only managed 2 steps into the room. From behind the privacy screen emerged a figure, not a doctor, but a man in the uniform of a private security firm, broad-shouldered with a stone face. I had hired him 2 hours ago with a single instruction: protect the patient from any male visitors except medical staff. The guard silently, without unnecessary movement, blocked Sterling's path. His hand, the size of a shovel, landed on my son's chest. Unauthorized entry prohibited, he rumbled in a deep voice. Get your hands off me. Sterling squealed, trying to get around the mountain of muscle. I'm the husband. I have rights. Vada, Vada, wake up. Vada lay motionless, but the heart monitor reacted to his shout. The pulse curve jerked upward. You are disturbing a critical patient. The guard gently but firmly began to push Sterling back into the corridor. Leave, or I will be forced to use physical force. Sterling resisted, his boots slid on the linoleum. Mama, he yelled, turning back to me. Tell him she's my wife. I sat motionless, gripping the book. Take him away, I said quietly. But the guard heard. Sterling was shoved into the corridor. The ward door slammed in his face, cutting him off from the victim he was used to considering his property. He was left standing in the empty hallway, disheveled, humiliated, stripped of all his toys. He looked at me. In his eyes, I saw hatred. Pure, unclouded hatred. In that moment, I realized the war had just begun. He wouldn't retreat that easily. He would play for pity. He would crawl. He would lie. And he started right then. His face changed. The mask of anger was replaced by a mask of suffering. He sniffled and took a step toward me. Mama, his voice trembled, becoming pitiful, like in childhood when he broke a vase. Ma, I'm sorry. I'm a fool. I got confused. Help me. They're going to kill me. I knew who he was talking about, the people he promised money from the sale of the apartment, but nothing stirred in me except disgust. Let's go outside, I said, standing up. There are people here. We'll talk where you won't disturb the sick. I headed for the exit, knowing he would follow. He had no choice. I was his last hope, a hope I intended to shatter completely. We walked into a long hospital corridor away from the nurse's station and Vada's room. It was empty here. Only a fluorescent light flickered, making an unpleasant buzzing sound. Sterling scurried after me like a beaten dog, but I could feel his tension behind me. He was still looking for a loophole, still calculating options. I stopped by a window overlooking the parking lot. Where his blue SUV once stood, there was now an empty space. I turned to him. "Well," I said, "I'm listening." Sterling looked around to make sure there were no witnesses and then collapsed to his knees. It was so theatrical, so rehearsed that I felt nauseous. He grabbed the hem of my coat with dirty fingers, looking up into my eyes. "Mama, Mommy, forgive me," he wailed, tears streaming down his cheeks. Real or not, I couldn't tell anymore. "I didn't mean to. I'll fix everything. I swear I'll never drive drunk again. I'll find a job. Just put everything back how it was. Give the apartment back." He sobbed, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "You don't understand, Ma. I have problems. Serious problems. I owe money. A lot of money. If I don't pay, they won't just beat me up. They'll kill me. Mama, I'm your son, your blood. Would you let them kill me?" He spoke fast, choking on words, trying to crush me with pity, fear, and guilt. "And those girls in the car," he continued, seeing I was silent. "Just colleagues. We were coming from a corporate party. I was just giving them a ride. I love Vada. I can't live without her. I sat here, prayed. Mama, believe me." I looked down at him, at his shaking hands, at his pathetic posture, and I didn't see a son. I saw a parasite that had been sucking the life out of us for years. "Stand up," I said quietly. "I won't stand up until you forgive me." He howled louder, hoping some staff member would come out and see this scene of the prodigal son's repentance. "Mama, I'll do anything for you. I'll take care of Vada. I'll carry her in my arms. Just don't abandon me. Don't take my home." "Stand up." My voice whipped him like a slap. He flinched and slowly rose, still sniffling. "You say you are my blood?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. "Yes, that is true, and it is my greatest shame, my most terrible mistake. I raised you. I gave you everything, but I didn't teach you to be a human being." I opened my bag and took out a folded sheet of paper. It was a copy of the deed with the registrar's stamp that Odora had forwarded to me. "Look," I unfolded the paper in front of his face. "See this stamp? The apartment is no longer yours and never will be. It belongs to Vada solely." Sterling stared at the document, his eyes darting across the lines, pupils dilated. But how?" he mumbled. "What if she—" Well, he didn't finish, but I understood. If she dies, that's what he was thinking. If Vada dies, he, as the legal husband, inherits everything. The apartment, the money, the things. He was already burying her in his thoughts and calculating the profit. "Thinking about inheritance?" I asked, and my voice became so cold that it felt like the temperature in the corridor dropped 10 degrees. "Don't get your hopes up." I took out a second document. It was a will. My will, which I had rewritten that morning at Odora's office while waiting for the apartment paperwork. "Read." I pointed a finger at the highlighted paragraph. Sterling read aloud. "All my property, movable and immovable, as well as funds and accounts, I bequeath to the Hope for Paws Animal Shelter." He looked up at me, filled with genuine horror. "You're joking. Cats, Mama, are you crazy? You're giving everything to cats and leaving your own son on the street?" "Yes," I answered calmly. "Cats are at least grateful when you feed them, and they don't turn off the heating on the sick." "You wouldn't dare." "You wouldn't dare?" he screamed, forgetting the role of the repentant sinner. His face twisted with malice. "I'll contest this. I'll prove you're incompetent, that you're an old senile woman. The court will be on my side. I am the only heir." "Try it," I smirked. "I have a certificate from a psychiatrist. I got it today. I am of sound mind and memory, but you, son, have problems." "What problems?" he spat. "Lies," I said simply. "Tonight, the apartment will have new locks and a security system. If you try to enter without Vada's invitation, and I'm sure she won't invite you, a squad will arrive, and this time they won't let you out in 2 days." Sterling froze. He realized the scale of the disaster. He had no home. He had no car. He had no money. And he had no future inheritance. "And the debts," he whispered, and in that whisper was real terror. "Mama, they'll kill me. They really will. Give me at least money to cover the debt. I'll leave. I'll disappear. You won't see me again. Just give me money." "No," I cut him off. "You're a big boy, Sterling. You brewed this tea. Now you drink it. Go work as a loader, a janitor, a cab driver. Oh, wait, you'll lose your license. That means a foot courier. Work it off. You monster, he spat in my face. You're not a mother, you're a viper. I hate you. I hope you die with your Vada. Feeling is mutual, son, I said, putting the documents back in my bag. Now leave. Security is coming. At the end of the hall, 2 guards indeed appeared, likely called by someone disturbed by the noise. Sterling looked at them, then at me. Panic darted in his eyes. This isn't over, he shouted, backing away. You'll regret this. I'll find a way. The apartment is mine. Mine. He turned and ran to the stairs, nearly knocking over a nurse with a tray. I watched him go. I didn't pity him. I counted the time, the strength, and the love I had wasted nurturing this weed, but it was too early to relax. He was cornered, and cornered rats jump at the throat. He didn't just run away. He ran to the apartment. I knew it. He would try to get in before the locks were changed. He would try to carry out everything valuable: appliances, Vada's jewelry, maybe even furniture. I took out my phone and dialed Odora. Odora, he's on his way. Are the locksmiths there? They're working, Oilia. Police are here too. I asked an officer to supervise the process. I showed him the property deeds. Good. He's running there. Warn them. He's furious. Don't worry. Odora's voice was calm. We'll meet him. I hung up and returned to the nurse's station. I needed to ensure Vada was okay after this visit, but a new feeling was already maturing inside me. A feeling of liberation. I had cut off a rotten branch. Now the tree would breathe easier. Sterling, as I predicted, didn't go to the bus station or to friends. Choking with rage and fear, he raced to the only place he still considered his, the apartment. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but Odora told me everything in detail later, and the picture stood before my gaze as vividly as if I were watching a movie. He flew into the lobby, skipping steps, ignoring the elevator. One thought must have been pounding in his head: make it in time. Make it in time to grab the laptop, the plasma TV, the stash if there was one, maybe even documents to blackmail us later. He reached the 3rd floor, already pulling out his keyring, but froze in front of the door. The door was wide open. 2 workers in overalls stood in the hallway. One was drilling out the old lock cylinder, and the second was unpacking a box with a new, expensive alarm system. Standing next to them, arms crossed, was Odora, unshakable as a rock. And a little further away, leaning against the wall, 2 police officers looked bored, the very same ones who had processed his arrest for the theft. Fate, it seems, has a peculiar sense of humor. What is going on here? Sterling yelled, bursting into the hallway. Get out! This is my apartment. I'm the owner. The worker with the drill didn't even turn around, continuing to buzz. Odora slowly raised her eyes over her glasses. Citizen Vance, she pronounced officially. Leave the premises. You no longer reside here. Who are you? He shrieked, trying to squeeze past her into the living room. I'm registered here. I live here. My mother bought this. Your mother bought it, and your mother gifted this apartment to Miss Vada Jefferson, Odora replied calmly, pulling a fresh extract from the folder. Here is the document. Owner, Vada Jefferson, and here is a certificate from the records office. You were deregistered this morning by the owner's request, based on loss of right of use. Deregistered? Sterling turned purple. Without me? That's illegal. I'll file a complaint. He tried to dash into the bedroom, apparently hoping to get to the safe, but one of the officers blocked his path. Citizen, hold it, the sergeant said lazily but authoritatively. You were told in plain English. This is someone else's property. You are nobody here. Do you know who I am? Sterling switched to his favorite but now useless ace. I have connections. I'm making a call right now. He feverishly pulled out his phone and started poking at the screen. Odora and the police silently watched this spectacle. Hello, Dunny. D, bro, help me out. It's total lawlessness here. My mom went crazy. Cops are pressing me. Hello? D Money apparently hung up or blocked him after hearing about the car theft. Sterling dialed another number. Sergio, it's Sterling. Need guys urgently. Pull up to the crib. What do you mean you can't? What do you mean you heard? That's all lies, Sergio. He lowered the phone. No one wanted to stick their neck out for a loser who no longer had a rich mommy behind him. His friends were friends of his money and his car. Without them, he was empty space to them. Leave, Sterling, Odora said, and a note of fatigue sounded in her voice. Don't make it worse. There's nothing for you here. My stuff, he howled. My stuff is in there. Clothes, computer, I have the right to take my stuff. Your things are packed, Odora nodded. She signaled to the worker, and he brought out a large gym bag and a couple of black trash bags stuffed tight with something soft. Here, clothes, shoes, hygiene products. The laptop stays. It was bought on credit in Vada's name, and the credit isn't paid off. So that is her property. The TV, too, and the gaming console. The worker threw the bag and sacks at Sterling's feet. Take them and go. Sterling stood, looking at these pathetic bundles. His whole life fit into 2 trash bags. You'll regret this, he hissed. You'll all regret this. I won't leave it like this. Citizen, exit. The officer placed a hand on his holster. The gesture was unambiguous. Sterling grabbed the bag, kicked one of the sacks, and cursing through his teeth, tumbled out onto the stairwell. The door slammed shut behind him. The new lock clicked. That sound was the final period. He went down to the street. It was evening. A cold wind chased fallen leaves across the asphalt. Sterling stood by the entrance, where just yesterday he parked his luxury car and didn't know where to go. He couldn't go to the girl's place. They dumped him. He couldn't go to friends. He had no money for rent. He looked up at the windows on the 3rd floor. A light was on there, a warm, cozy light that was now unreachable for him. He realized he had been crossed out, not just kicked out, but erased like a dirty stain. With trembling hands, he took out his wallet. There lay a card, a gold card linked to my account, which he loved to flash in restaurants. Hotel, he thought. I'll get a room at the plaza, sleep it off, and come up with something in the morning. Mom will cool down. She always cools down. He dragged his bundles to the nearest ATM glowing in the window of a 24-hour store across the street. He inserted the card, entered the PIN, and requested the balance. The screen displayed, card service suspended by bank, card retained. The ATM whirred and swallowed the plastic. Sterling stared blankly at the black slot where his last hope had disappeared. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Give it back. He punched the screen. Give back the card. Passers-by shied away from him. A man with a dog stopped and threatened to call the police. Sterling slid down the wall of the store onto the dirty concrete. He sat surrounded by his trash bags, without a dime in his pocket, without a phone. The battery died on the last call to Sergio in a strange, cold city. At that moment, I, sitting in the hospital, received a notification from the bank. Attempted use of blocked supplementary card, retained by device. I put the phone down and looked at Vada. She was sleeping, breathing more evenly now. The machines beeped rhythmically and calmly. The worst was over for her. But for Sterling, the real hell was just beginning. A hell he built himself, brick by brick, lie by lie. And now he had to live in this house without windows or doors. 6 months passed. Autumn came into its own, painting the city in gold and crimson. But this cold was different. Clean, invigorating, promising not death, but rest before a new rebirth. I sat on the balcony of that same apartment. Now it didn't smell of dampness and tobacco, but of freshly brewed tea with thyme and oil paints. Vada sat opposite, wrapped in a fluffy blanket the color of baked milk. She was still thin, and her movements sometimes showed the caution of a person who survived a long illness. But there was no longer that hunted emptiness in her eyes. Life shone there. She was painting. A watercolor landscape was blooming on the easel, the view from our window of the old park. You know, Mom, she said, dipping her brush into a cup of water. I found a job at the Central Library. They opened a rare books department, and they need a restorer. The pay isn't huge, but it's enough for me, and the schedule is peaceful. That's wonderful, darling, I smiled, sipping my tea. But don't worry about money. You know we have a cushion. I know. She put down the brush and looked at me seriously. But I want to do it myself. I want to feel that I can. After all this, it's important for me to know I'm not helpless. You are the strongest girl I know. I covered her hand with mine. We didn't talk about Sterling. His name became taboo, as if by pronouncing it, we could summon an evil spirit back into our world. But his shadow had vanished from this apartment along with the old wallpaper we replaced in the first months. The walls were now a warm peach, the furniture light. We had scrubbed out even the memory of him. I sold my business up north. The logistics company I gave half my life to was now in the reliable hands of my deputies, and I received freedom and the means to simply live. I bought myself a small studio in the building next door to be close to Vada, but not to interfere with her building a new life. We became a family, a strange, broken, but real family, bound not by blood, but by scars. I'm going for a walk before the sun goes down, I said, standing up. Should I buy those cinnamon buns you like? Yes, please, Vada smiled, and grabbed some milk. I walked out onto the street. The air was crisp and ringing. I walked down the familiar avenue, enjoying simple things, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the laughter of children on the playground, the feeling of peace I hadn't known for many years, while carrying the weight of a strong woman and mother of a troubled son. My path lay past a car wash on the corner. Usually I didn't pay attention to the hustle there, but today my gaze snagged on a familiar silhouette. At the bay stood a huge black Jeep covered in soapy foam, and bustling around it with a rag in his hands was a man in a soaked-through gray jumpsuit. He was thin, stooped, with a wind-burned face etched with deep wrinkles. He scrubbed the fender of the car with a kind of frenzy, afraid to miss a spot. It was Sterling. I slowed my pace, but didn't stop. He felt my gaze. He raised his head and saw me. For a second, time froze. We looked at each other across the strip of road separating us and the abyss of betrayal. In his eyes, I expected to see anger, pleading, maybe shame, but there was only fatigue, the infinite dull fatigue of a man fighting every day for a piece of bread. His hands, once manicured and used to holding only a glass or a steering wheel, were red from cold water and chemicals. He took a half step forward. His lips trembled as if he wanted to shout something. "Mama, help, forgive." I didn't give him that chance. I didn't turn away. I didn't speed up. I just slid my gaze over him like passing by a lamppost or a random passerby and walked on. My face remained calm. Nothing trembled inside. No pity, no gloating, just fact. Everyone gets what they deserve. He wanted to live beautifully without working. Now he works dirty to survive. The balance is restored. I walked another block, feeling his gaze on my back. He didn't run after me. Apparently, life had taught him something after all. Or maybe the car wash foreman just yelled at him, ordering him to work faster. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. A notification popped up on the screen, a message from an unknown number. I opened it. "Ma, please, I can't take it anymore. I understand everything. Give me a chance, even just $10 for food, please." I looked at these lines. Ma, a word that was once the most precious to me, now became just a set of letters. Chance. I gave him hundreds of chances. All his life, I gave him chances, and he spent them all on killing the faith in himself. My finger hovered over the reply button. What could I write? Endure it. God will provide. No, I tapped the settings icon, selected block contact, then delete chat. The screen blinked and cleared. The last thread connecting me to the past snapped. I put the phone in my pocket, inhaled the autumn air deeply, and smiled. Ahead was the bakery where they baked the most delicious cinnamon rolls for my daughter, my real daughter. I picked up my pace. I was expected at home. That is the story, my dear listeners, a story about love that can be blind and about an epiphany that sometimes costs too much. A story about how one woman found the strength to cut off her own flesh to save a stranger's life that became family to her. And now I want to ask you, was Oilia right? Did she act cruelly toward her only son? After all, a mother's heart should forgive everything, they tell us. Or is there a line beyond which forgiveness becomes an accessory to a crime? Would she have left him at the bottom if he hadn't crossed that line with the heating and medicine? Many will say, that's her son. She should have helped, treated him, sent him to rehab, but not to the street. And others will argue, a grown man must answer for his actions. Stop babysitting. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.